That one works. Well, hi there everybody, it's Chris van Niekerk here at Blue Rhino Safaris, and I would like to discuss the radios with you quickly. When we travel in our convoys and when we're going out for game drives, I normally give you a two-way radio, and we use the radio to talk about stuff that we see. I tell you stories, we use it for safety communication, all of those things. The radios is included in the trip, so you don't have to pay extra for the radio. The radio is part of what I do. Without that, I feel you lose out on many of the things that you should be seeing or paying attention to as we drive. So for me, a radio is essential, a two-way radio. The radios that I use are all VHF radios, and VHF radios look the same as a UHF radio. The UHF, ultra high frequency radios, they are the old boat radios, the radios that the amateur radio guys would use, the guys on the ski boats. Those are all the old UHF boats, radios. The world has moved a little bit over to VHF instead of ultra high frequency, very high frequency. So it's a frequency band that is not as high as the ultra high frequencies. Just a few basic terminologies to start with. The first radio that we have is a mobile station. A mobile station is typically one of these radios that you built into your vehicle. This radio has a handset and it's built in, it's on your 12 volt car battery, so you don't need to charge it. Any VHF mobile station will work. You get some of them that cost you like $1,000 and you get some of them that cost you $7. The main difference is negligible for what you are doing. So get yourself something. Motorola, Kenwood are very much trusted names. The icons are good as well, and they're a bit cheaper. So find yourself a radio that isn't too expensive and that will cover the job. Not a UHF, a VHF radio. Now the second thing, the second radio that we have, a handheld radio. Handheld radio. Now you'll notice the aerial is very short. On a VHF signal, the signal of VHF is 1.2, 1.3 meters. And if they take that antenna and they reduce it into this small size, it means that the range of these little radios are a lot less than the range of a magnetic base with a whip. This is called a whip. So if you have a magnetic base with a whip and a cable that connects onto your radio, you have a much better reach for two reasons. The antenna is outside, standing upright, and it's in the best position to accept a signal from your radio. If you have a radio inside your vehicle, then it means the frequency which comes to you in, let's say, in a column size, can only fit, or the wave can only fit through the windscreen sideways. It can't go through like this because the windscreen is too small. So it has to go on its side, which cuts your signal in half. And that's why these handhelds have a very poor signal from inside the vehicle. Signal reach on VHF and UHF is exactly the same. A lot of people say UHF has better reach. It's not true. VHF and UHF is, for all intents and purposes, exactly the same. It's line of sight. If I see someone, I should be able to talk to them. Even if it's 50 kilometers away, waves move. They curl according to the curvature of the earth, according to temperature, the geography. So on a good day with VHF and UHF, you can get 50 kilometers line of sight with no problem. But if we're traveling on the ground, we're amongst trees and traffic, then it typically gets cut down to, on handhelds, about 2 kilometers, and on the mag base with the long whips outside of the vehicle, we get sometimes 10 kilometers, depending on traffic and terrain. And those are the things to know: handheld, mobile station, and if you had a station built in on the mountain, it would be called a fixed station. So if you're looking to buy a radio for yourself, then firstly it needs to be VHF. I do not operate on UHF channels. It needs to be VHF. you need to have a license for your VHF according to South African regulation. That license you can get through a club. It's the cheapest way and the easiest way to do it. You don't have to deal with ICASA yourself. You can just pay your membership fees and you are registered with the club. You need frequencies to operate on. Like you tune your radio to select Highveld or Mix FM or RSG or whatever. Like you do that, you also have that on a two-way radio. You have to pick the channel that you are using. And those channels are frequencies, and those frequencies are regulated. So you have to buy the ability to use the frequency, and it needs to be programmed. Just like on your car radio, channel 1, 2, 3, 4. Channel 4 is mix and channel 5 is Highveld. You switch between the two, so you have a switch button on the radio to switch between the channels. Only difference is this radio will send a signal and it will also receive a signal. Your car radio only receives a signal. Now the difference between a UHF radio and a VHF radio is the VHF has a lot better voice clarity. So if you listen to your favorite radio station in the car, that is on a VHF frequency. VHF frequency has very good clarity. So when we go out on trips, we use radios. I use VHF. I've switched over to VHF. But because VHF is so popular, it is quite regulated. And in South Africa, you have to register the frequency that you use, and that is done with ICASA. So if you want to use your own frequency, then you buy that frequency from ICASA or you rent it from them and you pay for that frequency. So I've got a spectrum of frequencies that we can use, and it varies from the security companies to the radio stations to the clubs, and everybody else that uses a VHF frequency will use one of those frequencies in the range, but it's limited. It only has so many frequencies that you can actually use. So ICASA regulates the use of these frequencies. So if I use radios, I have to use a frequency that is suitable for my purposes and that I'm allowed to use, because you need to have a license to use a frequency. So what I've decided to do is just to simply join the Land Cruiser Club. Not because I drive a Land Cruiser. Before the Land Cruiser I had a Mazda, and I have no affinity to any specific vehicle. But the Land Cruiser Club, you don't have to own a Land Cruiser to be member of the club. You go onto their website and you become a member and you register your radio as one of their club members. And once you've done that, your radio license fees are included in your membership. So your annual license that you have to pay for a VHF radio is not required anymore. Your fee is then paid by the club and you are a member of the club. So to make life a lot easier for us, rather than me sharing frequencies individually, I just say blanket rule Land Cruiser Club frequencies, because I also need a license for those frequencies to be able to communicate. So I've settled on Land Cruiser Club of South Africa. The link is on the website. The link is I'll also put on the video so that you can see exactly where to go to get your membership. And if you have that, you have 12 frequencies. And if you're on a trip of mine and you have a Land Cruiser Club radio, then we will use those frequencies. Please bear in mind that in the old days, the radio sales guys would give you like open frequencies that's not very regulated, and they would give you a few Aura frequencies, a few maybe a Land Cruiser Club frequency, maybe a Land Rover Club frequency, and they would sort of program it and tell you that you've got the Land Cruiser Club, so you're good now. It costs you nothing, which already should send alarm bells out. If it costs you nothing, it means that something is not right. So what I urge you to do is go back to your radio dealer, take your Land Cruiser Club membership, which I think is only like 160 or 200 Rand a year. It's cheap to join. Your radio license is included, which means you are now a legal radio user, and you get the frequencies. So you take that letter from Land Cruiser Club, take it to your radio dealer with your radio and ask him to program your radio for Land Cruiser Club. He will then take those 12 frequencies, he will add them onto your radio, and you will have all 12 frequencies in there. If you have a private frequency at your company or something like that, you can just ask them to add those frequencies on your radio as well. And in that way you have the Land Cruiser Club frequencies, which means you are on your radio, you are linked to me. So it must be VHF and it must be Land Cruiser Club. So if you're buying a radio, VHF. If you need a license for the radio, Land Cruiser Club. If you need frequencies to talk, Land Cruiser Club. That's the way that I do it. So if there's any questions, please phone me, get hold of me. I'm not going to give you the frequencies. I'm not allowed to. That's not what I do. If you're a member of the Land Cruiser Club and you have their 12 frequencies, then you will be able to use it. So lastly, if you don't have your own radio, I give you a radio for the trip. Please don't go out and buy a radio because you think you need one. It is nicer to have your own because you don't have to have it charged. All my handhelds have to be charged every night, so it's a schlep to get the radios in and out every day. And if you want to be left alone with your own radio and it's on the battery, you don't have to worry about charging, then mobile station, otherwise your own handheld which you can charge in your vehicle as you go. So please don't go and buy your own just because you think you need it. If you don't have one, I will give you one. Other than that, drive safe and I hope to see you on a trip soon. Cheers.